While Smith was showering, Fountain and Silverstein used a piece of hacksaw blade to cut through the wire screen on the exercise cage, and as Smith stepped out of the shower, Fountain slipped through the hole in the screen and ran down the tier, shank in hand. Silverstein crawled out of the cage too and was close behind, although he didn't have a knife. Cadillac Smith had his own knife hidden under his towel, and as Fountain approached him, he pulled it out and lunged forward, stabbing Fountain in the chest. The impact threw Fountain backward, but it didn't kill him. Silverstein tackled Smith, knocking him over, and the two men wrestled for control of Smith's knife. Back on his feet, Fountain joined the fight, and he and Silverstein quickly overpowered Smith. Both began stabbing him. The guards on duty sounded an alarm, but no one would open the steel gate that separated them from the inmates. They were not going onto the tier as long as Silverstein and Fountain were armed. An autopsy would later show that Cadillac Smith had been stabbed 67 times. When Silverstein and Fountain finished, they grabbed his arms and dragged him up and down the tier so that the other inmates, still locked in their cells, could see the bloody corpse. A few white inmates cheered and yelled racial slurs. Then the two killers surrendered. The control unit was supposed to be the most secure cell block in the Bureau, yet Silverstein and Fountain had managed to kill 2 inmates in a matter of months. These deaths, plus the multitude of problems among inmates in the general population of Marion, prompted Bureau officials to wonder if it was time to begin cracking down. Some within the Bureau urged Director Norman Carlson to lock down the institution, which meant that every inmate would be locked in his cell 23 hours a day and only released for 1 hour of exercise. But others, including the warden at Marion, Harold Miller, argued against such harsh restrictions. They pointed out that inmates in the control unit already were locked in their cells all day long, but that it hadn't stopped Silverstein or Fountain from killing other inmates. Carlson sided with Miller. No single incident in the Bureau's history is as controversial as to what happened next. Over the years, guards have made Officer Merle Eugene Klutz into a martyr, and inmates have done the same with Silverstein. The men locked horns almost from the moment that they met. By 1983, Klutz had worked for the Bureau for nearly 19 years, always as a guard at Marion. He had grown up in southern Illinois, had never left the area except for a short stint in the military, and wouldn't have flinched at being described as a redneck cowboy. At age 51, he had a watermelon belly, white hair cropped short, and weathered looks of a man used to working outdoors on a farm. He didn't talk much, preferred the company of the horses he raised on a few acres outside Marion to most people, and didn't take guff from anyone, whether from an inmate or a fellow guard. Part of the reason Klutz was moved into the control unit in 1981 was because he wasn't afraid of the inmates. Many other guards were. According to a special task force sent in afterward to investigate his death, most inmates in the control unit, including Silverstein and Fountain, lifted weights during the 1 hour they were out of their cells. They also exercised in their cells by doing several hours of calisthenics each day, including hundreds of push-ups and sit-ups, until they became so strong that they could virtually not be physically controlled by staff. The inmates' strength and violent backgrounds made many of the guards reluctant to carry out their duties because of the fear of their personal liability, the panel wrote. Of all the inmates in the unit, Silverstein was perhaps the most notorious, particularly after he killed Cadillac Smith. Other convicts saw him as a defiant leader, unafraid of guards and the Bureau. On the other side was Klutz, one of the Marion's tougher guards. Convicted killer John Greshner, another member of the Aryan Brotherhood, and Silverstein's best friend in Marion at the time, had tangled with Klutz before Silverstein arrived. We'd bang heads, back up, and bang heads again, but I eventually backed up. I tried to figure out a way to navigate around Klutz, but only after I backed up, Greshner recalled. When Tommy and Klutz started bumping heads, I told Tommy, "You gotta back up from this guy, or we'll get beyond a cops versus convict thing. It will get personal." And that's what happened. It got personal real fast. To this day, Silverstein claims that Klutz set out to break him by harassing him in a dozen petty ways that most guards learn early in their careers. According to Silverstein, Klutz passed by him when it was his turn to be first to go to the recreation cage. He searched his cell more often than those other prisoners. He searched his cell more often than those of the other prisoners, and left it in shambles each time. He would hang on to Silverstein's mail and deliver a big bundle of it all at once after several days. At night, he would shine his flashlight in Silverstein's eyes during the inmate counts. Worst of all, according to Silverstein, Klutz would intentionally smudge his artwork, later teasing him by saying, "I did a bit of work on your painting." Whether or not Klutz actually did these things is impossible to verify. The Bureau denies it, of course, while Greshner and other inmates claim Silverstein is telling the truth. I remember hearing Klutz tell Tommy, "Hey, I'm running this shit. You ain't running it. You're a fucking prisoner. I'm the cop. Who the fuck you think you are?" Greshner recalled. What isn't disputed is that Klutz and Silverstein clearly disliked each other, and regardless of the cause, this dislike turned into a personal hatred, at least on Silverstein's side. "The guy was torturing me," Silverstein said. "It was like I was a little kid again walking home from school, and that bully, Gary, was picking on me. I've always attracted bullies, and I don't know why, but I hate him, and I hated Klutz. Everyone knew that Klutz and I had a thing. Everyone always says how mean and nasty and rotten I am for killing him. They say he was just doing his job, blah, blah, blah. You know, because he put on a badge, he's somehow a saint. But it wasn't like that. When someone starts to poke at you, after a while, nothing else matters. All you think about is getting revenge, striking out. With me, it was Klutz." Inside the isolated Marion Penitentiary, deeper still within the control unit, the so-called prison within a prison, Silverstein began to fixate on Klutz. "From the time I'd hear his voice or see him come to work, I'd be pacing myself," Silverstein recalled. "My whole day would be ruined." Silverstein became so frazzled that he couldn't draw. When other convicts yelled to him, he didn't answer. At night, he couldn't sleep. All he could think about was Klutz and getting revenge. It just kept building, and pretty soon, killing him was all I could think about. Every day, every night, every moment that I was awake, I just thought about how much I wanted to kill him, how much I wanted him dead." His fellow prisoners noticed that Silverstein had become obsessed. No matter what happened, if it was something bad, he accused Klutz of being behind it, even when some other guard was involved. I told Tommy, "Hey man, when you kill a cop, you know it's over. Your life is gone." "You got to get some perspective here," recalled Ronnie Brasino, a convicted murderer who was in a cell near. I told Tommy, "Hey man, when you kill a cop, you know it's over. Your life is gone." "You got to get some perspective here," recalled Ronnie Brasino, a convicted murderer who was in a cell near Silverstein at the time. 20 years from now, every new guard will still know who you are. 20 years from now, every new guard will still know you were the one who killed a cop, because that's something the guards will never forget. Greshner said he too tried to discourage Silverstein. "If you do a cop, you are going on Birdman status," he told him, a reference to the Birdman of Alcatraz who killed a Leavenworth guard and was never released from prison. But by this time, it had reached the point where nothing else mattered to Silverstein except striking at Klutz. "I knew I had to do it. I had to kill him." Sometime in early October, Klutz removed the mattress in Silverstein's cell and replaced it with another one. It's not clear why the mattresses were switched, but Silverstein saw the change. Silverstein saw the change as yet another attempt to torture him. Silverstein began plotting a way to kill the guard, and he found plenty of help in carrying out his plan. After Cadillac Smith was murdered, the Bureau decided to handcuff prisoners in the control unit whenever they were taken out of their cells. The inmates would then be escorted by 3 guards to the shower stall or to the recreation cage. The obvious time for Silverstein to attack Klutz was when guards released him from his cell, but he still would have to get out of the handcuffs, find a knife, and make certain that Klutz was trapped on the tier, or else Klutz would simply run off the tier to safety. Whispering to other convicts through the air vents in the back of their cells, Silverstein and his fellow gang members came up with the plan. On Saturday, October 22nd, at 8:40 a.m., Guards took John Campbell, a reputed member of the Aryan Brotherhood, outside the control unit so he could exercise out of doors. A few minutes later, Campbell complained that he was cold and wanted to exercise inside the cage that ran parallel to the tier. Guards moved him back indoors. From his cell, Silverstein shot Campbell a knowing smile. Step one of the murder plan had been accomplished. At 9:30 a.m., Silverstein was ordered to cuff up so that he could be escorted to the stall for his weekly shower. He stuck out his hands without protest, and a pair of handcuffs was snapped over his wrist. He was frisked as he stepped from his cell. No weapons were found, and 3 guards took him to the shower. As Silverstein walked down the tier, he continued to smile. Step 2 was going as planned. 42 minutes later, Silverstein finished his shower. He had been hyped up, nervous, but like most other inmates in the unit, he had always taken lengthy showers, and he had kept his routine today to avoid suspicion. Still wet, he called to the guards and was secretly pleased when he saw 3 of them coming down the tier to open the locked shower door and to escort him back to his cell. Klutz was one of the 3. The 3rd step had been accomplished. Silverstein put out his hands to be handcuffed and turned to walk down the tier. Officers William McClellan and John Mahan were on either side of him. Klutz would follow behind Silverstein. But as the 4 men began to walk down the tier, they heard a voice. "Hey Klutz, I need to talk to you." It was John Campbell, the gang member in the